context on decision-making, innovation, and the speed of change. So, without further ado, Robert, I know the story goes you had $200 in a bicycle in 1994 when you launched Geek Squad. You brought it up to Best Buy in 2002, so you had about 8 years as an entrepreneur. How many agents and locations had you gotten it to by that point?
In 2000, when I called Best Buy, we were in 4 cities: Minneapolis, Chicago, San Francisco, and LA. We didn't have any offices, literally just cars and people, and we dispatched everything out of Minneapolis, kind of like how Uber is today, where they just have people and cars and dispatch.
Cool. So I'm curious again, as an entrepreneur, having launched not only in Minneapolis but taking it to 4 cities in total. What's your personal philosophy on risk taking and driving growth and innovation?
I'm risk averse.
Yeah.
I don't take risks. Risks are things that you do. I mean, there's a variety of different ways to do it. There's risk that you're taking, and my risk was staying in school and taking on student debt. I mean, that was the risk I was avoiding by starting my company. I didn't think I could work anywhere in a big corporation, so I was forced to found a company. I didn't wake up deciding to be an entrepreneur. I didn't see any other options. I applied to become Prince's head engineer, and he didn't hire me. So, had Prince hired me, I probably would have toured the world with him on tour and had a lot of fun parties, but I probably I may not have started the company, and there's thinking that goes, if you don't start your company when you're single in your 20s before you have kids and settle down or things like that, there's a reason why that works, Like my youngest now is 16, so in 2 years I will have reduced my risk again, which is that I'm going to go back to having 20 hours a day free, no kids at home, and under the age of 50, which means, with the current progress of medical technology, I got 40 years of work ahead. Only
Right.
now I'm more experienced. So I plan on, my next startup, I think I'm going to be even more dangerous. I sold everything I own when I moved to California because, even teenagers now aren't even really getting cars or driver's licenses anymore. I live in San Francisco. I have Uber and all these home delivery services. So actually I sold everything I owned. I rent my house, and I'm buying a house in Napa because my wife wants a second home, but it's like, why would you buy a second home? So we're going to buy it and just rent it out on Airbnb and use it like 3 days a month and rent it the other 27 days a month. But I don't want to own anything. So I do that because I'm very risk averse. I don't want to be encumbered by debt. And that dates back to being a college student, and I mean, I once bounced a check for a 99-cent burrito. And I knew I was going to bounce the check, but I hadn't eaten in a day, and I was really hungry. And as I watched the burrito cook in the microwave, I remember going, "This is going to cost me like $23. This is a really expensive goddamn burrito." So you never really get over that sense that you're this close to starvation, which I think is good. It keeps you hungry, it keeps you on your toes. Well, I'm kind of back in that now. I've moved again, starting over. And so in terms of risk, the whole deal with Best Buy is I had no other choice. You can't franchise Geek Squad, and proof of that is today. How many other Geek Squads are there? None. Why is that? It's because it's a really hard freaking business. It doesn't really scale. It's complex. I mean, you can barely franchise burgers and donuts, and even Krispy Kreme, had a lot of financial trouble. Let alone a franchising complex in-home service. So the fact that there's no other Geek Squads is proof that I made the right decision. Ultimately, I don't think Geek Squad and Best Buy have accomplished 5% of what they're capable of. But that has more to do with just the dynamics of large enterprises,
Mm-hmm.
Part of me, I had no choice. I had to sell Geek Squad because for me, the risk was I don't want my first startup being a failure. So by putting it inside Best Buy, I ensured its survival. I could have made more money had I taken it public, but I would have been ripping off public shareholders, selling them a company that wasn't really scalable. I cheated because Geek Squad is scalable as part of Best Buy. and it helps Best Buy achieve profit. But waiting for people's computer to crash is not a good strategy. But selling them extended services when they buy the TV and selling them to mount the TV on the wall and hiding the cables in the thing and doing the appliance support, that works together. So that's a synergistic transaction where they kind of, and now today, I think Best Buy realizes a huge amount of its profits from services, not really from the stuff itself that they sell.
Right. Right. So, as the solo entrepreneur, with your company and being sort of the decision maker, how much was it a change for you to go into a corporate environment, with your business?
Well, it's a huge ass change. You can't keep beer in your office. I mean, you can't harass anybody. But there's two kinds of risks. There's the risk of action and the risks of inaction. There's a risk of losing the corporate culture and, but the trade-off is startups are great and they can be innovative and drink beer at night, but, they lack scale and leverage. Large corporations have resources and market share that they can deploy and use and influence, but they tend to lack agility. And so my risk also was staying small. I don't want to stay a small fry, some little computer repair person like everybody else in the Yellow Pages. So I traded one risk for another, and that's really how everything goes in life. As long as you have to be aware of the risks. Where people get in trouble is they fool themselves, they lie to themselves about what the risks are and stuff like that. So, I knew that computer prices were going to plummet. And mobile and Wi-Fi were going to tear apart the notion of, working at work or working from home and stuff like that. So, I predicted that cloud computing would emerge. And when it did, your computer's going to crash less unless you're still using Windows. And so, it was also to avoid the risk of declining market opportunity. Now, the big dynamic, on the other hand, one could argue, though, that by avoiding that risk that, I should have left Best Buy back in 2002, the year I sold it. Why didn't I? Well, because it was my first company, I wanted to stay and make sure they didn't screw it up. Like, Best Buy is probably still going to screw up Geek Squad. I mean, they're already, not even way into home automation, which is they should be pushing into all sorts of areas. And it's not even just Geek Squad, but even Best Buy in terms of services, I think, is, just way behind itself. When you look at, you can order a taxi, like Uber with your mobile phone. They're not doing that with any of their services. I think they're really just, uninspiring in that respect. But one could argue if I was really that smart, I would have left Best Buy in 2004, the year Facebook was founded, and come out to Silicon Valley then. Mm-hmm. I had a young kid and she was in elementary school and, Minnesota was a nice place to raise a kid. And I wanted to stay to make sure that at least my first startup is my calling card. I mean, it's why you and a bunch of other people want to talk to me is that, so sometimes you have to, I'm more of a long-term thinker. I care about my reputation. So I didn't want Geek Squad to just, even though it's better than where it could have been. It's much bigger than it would have been without Best Buy. So there's trade-offs there.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned earlier the risk profile, right? Young kid and to see your baby kind of mature, the business, coming inside of a company.
Yeah. It's not risky. We give founders way too much credit. When you're 24 and you're eating ramen noodle and eating 99-cent burritos, that's not really a risk you're taking. Right. It was either that or take on $100,000 in college debt. I mean, that's risky. Mm-hmm. Toiling away for decades to pay off that debt, that's risky. I'll tell you what I'm impressed with is a 30, 35-year-old, 40-year-old parent who has kids and family obligations and a spouse to mm-hmm. love and pay attention to, and then start a company. Man, that is ballsy. That is gutsy. That is a person I respect. So, notice my next startup's going to be when my kids are out of, at college and I've got free time. My wife doesn't want me hanging around the house all day long. That's not very risky either. So you know. But I'm not the kind of person that I don't like to bang my head against the wall. Like I don't go to Vegas and I don't gamble money. Like gambling to me is not fun. I'd rather do my homework, be patient, and when I throw my dart, I like to hit bullseyes. I don't like to just spew darts towards a dartboard.
No, I hear you. So quick question for you. What advice would you give executives who are on the other side of that equation? You brought your company into Best Buy. Do you have any advice for executives that are acquiring organizations? Or do you see any companies that are examples of good in this space?
No.
No.
I mean, I think probably the best acquisition I could think of is YouTube. I mean, when they got bought for what, 1.2 billion or something like that, everybody thought that was insane. Now it looks like an incredibly good deal. It's very profitable, but Google didn't touch it. They didn't mess with it. Like, you know, if you buy a business, first of all, get over the bullshit idea that you're going to incorporate this into your business. Like, whatever. Like, that's just not really going to happen. It's better to let it live on its own because if it was hitting some kind of growth rate, you should kind of let that happen. But there's a couple practical things I learned. Like one of the reasons I stayed at Best Buy is I dated Best Buy for a couple years before I got out. But that was in a different time. That was when the market was really down. So there was more patience there because there's no real returns anywhere in the market right now. And the treasury bills and quantitative easing have warped reality. That capital is desperate to find returns anywhere, and that's why valuations are so high because people are hedge funds and mutual funds and you know are giving money to VCs to invest in startups because the cost to start a company is much lower, so they can spray a lot of money around, and that's warping valuations. So now times are different than they were, 12, 13 years ago. But more practically, I mean, my advice to founders is, unless you're planning on staying, I mean, know what you're going to do and don't kid yourself. What I would say is that for me, going forward, I'm only interested in working with visionary CEOs, and there are very few of them, like a handful in the world, and that's about it. That's the biggest problem in corporations. I mean, there's the whole size issue. Can big corporations innovate? But I would argue the fish stinks from the head down. It comes down to the CEO. If your CEO does not get it, and then the second most important thing is the frickin' board. Like, more than half of Amazon's board is digital and has expertise. I don't know of anybody on Best Buy's board in the last 10 years that has any digital expertise. And the reason that's important is because A, the board is the one that reviews these big strategic plans. But if they don't understand digital, they don't understand trends, then they can't really evaluate it. And I don't care if you have an MBA from Harvard. There's so much disruptive technology going on that you got to know what the hell you're talking about. So, but if you're going to acquire a company, the first rule is don't change anything. The first thing a company does is they acquire them, and then the IT guys come in and they say, oh, you have to switch your email service and all this other crap. It is like, no. The first thing a big fish should do to the little fish is to let them realize the benefits of their size. Mm-hmm. So my advice, like any Best Buy acquisition, was, number one, tell them nothing's going to change right now. 2, look at your benefits plans and look at Best Buy's benefits plans and let the employees take whatever they want up to whatever any other Best Buy person can get. So Best Buy's benefits plans were much better and more generous than small Geek Squad at the time. So everybody got benefits upgrades, but they didn't have to switch right away. You give them like a year grace period. So nobody has to switch their email. Nobody has to switch their devices. You don't make people start switching out their computers. They should feel the benefits, not all the restrictions. Right. So you got to tell the IT guys, lay off. The second most important thing to do is what I call the buddy system. And that is from the CEO and founder, like the CEO of the company should be paired up with the founder of the acquisition company. The CFO of Best Buy should hang with the CFO. So if you're a 150,000 person organization and you're acquiring a company with 100 or 1,000 or 5,000 employees, you should have a 1-to-1 matchup system so that anybody can call anybody else. And, I had a guy named Sean Skelly inside Best Buy who's head of services. He went to all the boring Best Buy meetings and freed me up to let me do what I do at Geek Squad. So we had a good partnership, and we're still friends today. And that was a big reason why I think things worked out as well as it did. He protected the big beast from the smaller company, trying to preserve its unique qualities.
Yeah.
So even all the way down to like, a call center employee at the smaller company, find a person who has a similar level in the acquiring company, and it's just somebody you can call if you have a question. It's somebody you can just talk to if you're just don't know how to find a resource. Because if you can't do that, then that will probably give you an indication about whether or not you can expect any kind of support going forward.
Right. So, know we're wrapping up on time here. Just quick question. You mentioned the idea of working for visionary CEOs. Who would be on your short list of visionary CEOs?
I think the most interesting and fun CEO in the world right now is John Legere of T-Mobile.
Hmm.
I love his style. He's super irreverent. He breaks rules. I mean, he was a fourth place carrier at T-Mobile. And what's the first thing he did? Is he said, these cell phone plans are insane and they're too complicated. And he simplified everything. Like, and that's something any of us could do. The best CEOs are number one, they simplify things, and they simplify the offers. They don't try and use trickery and fine print. And you can tell his enthusiasm, and he's also made some smart moves, and his growing market share. They're still small and they have coverage issues, but I think he did the best that he could have with the hand he was dealt in terms of the spectrum he has and stuff like that. But like he showed up at AT&T's party in January
CES, yeah.
because he was at CES in Vegas. He loves Macklemore, so he showed up for the concert. They kicked him out, which makes AT&T look like a bunch of assholes. Which they played it just like David and Goliath, and he played that masterfully. So he uses Twitter. The other thing is he's on social media, and he's not. I don't even think a company should have a social media team anymore. That was fine when Twitter first came out and Facebook. But the problem with having a social media team is it basically says nobody else in the company has to be on social media. I want the CEO on Twitter. I want the CEO personally tweeting. You can have other legal departments and you can have marketing departments on Twitter, but the CEO needs to be there and available. And then the social media team can help like do that. But I want everybody. Imagine if all 150,000 people on Best Buy were on Twitter. Now, I was the one that came up with the idea for 12 Force. Right. I recommended it to the CMO, Barry Judge, at the time. And the idea happened was we were sitting in a meeting reviewing, we're at Geek Squad was spending $3 million a year on a PR firm, which I don't even want to spend, but that was, and it was a small budget for Best Buy. And I turned to Barry and I said, hey, what if we spent our $3 million on PR just listening to customers? And he's like, let's do it. And that's how 12 Force was born. The problem is, Best Buy got all these awards. Actually, the ad agency took credit for that and got the awards because that's how they get their billings. Well, the problem is that we got up to like 4,000 people or 2,000 or 4,000 people in Best Buy. Do you know how many are on 12 Force today? About 4,000. So in 7 years, it hasn't grown at all. What would happen if every company had all their employees on like a chat system where the employees could talk to each other and any customer could talk to anybody, all the way up to the CEO? I still think that is like the role model, and there's now even better tools and smartphones to do that. So
cool.
But John Legere of T-Mobile is my number one CEO in the world right now. I just think he's doing a killer job.
Cool. One last question for you, a short one. Today, Microsoft announces they're buying Mahjong, the creator of Minecraft, in an acquisition. How do you see Microsoft and Minecraft playing out?
It's hard to tell. I mean, we're using Skype right now, which I hardly ever use. I think Microsoft's really screwed up Skype, and they screwed up GroupMe, and they tend to screw up every acquisition. Why didn't they screw up Xbox? Because they didn't acquire Xbox. I mean, but also I don't play a lot of games. I mean, I hear it's amazing, and I wish it was around when I had when my kids were a lot younger or when I was a kid. So I don't know that they can screw it up because, I mean, they'll probably find a way. Um, but that community is so powerful that I don't think Microsoft could control them. So I don't know. I'm not really a Minecraft player, but I'm incredibly impressed by it. I just think the most interesting thing is just the low bit graphics. I love the lesson it teaches us is that you don't always need a movie that has the most perfect special effects to tell a good story. And for a great gaming ecosystem, you don't need perfect graphics. And it was built by one Swede, I mean, in the beginning. So
Right.
I think more important than what happens to Minecraft is that it wakes us up to really gaming as part of a culture and an ecosystem that is much broader than the idea of a game. It's much richer than that. And I think it's a hint of even if Minecraft gets shut down and gets ruined in 5 years and nobody uses it anymore, I think it's teaching a lot of people about rethinking what it means to build what we call a game and expanding our view of that.
Yeah. Well, Robert, again, I want to thank you for your time and your insights on innovation, risk taking, and your insights on the industry. Appreciate it.
All right, good to see you.
Thanks.